The carbon and oxygen cycle. Please realize that when we mention photosynthesis and cellular respiration, it is actually considered as rapid cycling. When we talk about the burning of fossil fuels and of forest fires, we are intending to say slow cycling. Although our information in this presentation contradicts this, please recognize our mistake. There are multiple ways in which carbon is released, absorbed, and cycled throughout the Earth. This is generally divided into two categories: slow cycling and rapid cycling. The primary processes done under the slow cycling category are photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Plants consume billions of tons of carbon in the form of carbon dioxide each year. This carbon dioxide that is found in the atmosphere then chemically combines with water and the energy from the sun in a process known as photosynthesis. The chloroplasts, which are found in the cells of the tree leaves, then use these three components to produce carbohydrates and oxygen. This glucose that is produced remains stored in the tree while the oxygen is released back into the atmosphere. Primary consumers then eat the plant and the glucose stored inside. As well, they intake the oxygen released from the plants. The cells in these animals then chemically combine the carbohydrates and oxygen to produce and release carbon dioxide, water, and energy. This process is known as cellular respiration. Decomposers are also a vital part to slow cycling processes. When a tree dies, these organisms and bacteria help to decompose the tree, releasing stored carbon into the atmosphere. The other way in which carbon is moved throughout the biosphere is rapid cycling. This means that high amounts of carbon are released into the atmosphere in a relatively short amount of time. An example of this is a forest fire. Trees are known as carbon sinks, meaning they work to remove carbon from the atmosphere. Because of the amount of carbon stored in trees, when a tree is burnt, all that carbon is released back into the atmosphere. Another example of rapid cycling is the burning of fossil fuels by factories and buildings. These emissions cause an increase of carbon in the atmosphere. Another major carbon sink is the ocean. It is the world's largest and contains over 38,000 gigatons of carbon. This is because the CO2 found in the atmosphere easily dissolves into the water. Then, through abiotic processes, it is transferred down to the ocean floor. From there, the carbon sinks into the Earth's crust, becoming a part of fossil fuels. These fossil fuels containing carbon are then burned to produce energy. This process involves combustion, which involves the cycling and burning of oxygen. There are multiple ways in which carbon and oxygen are moved throughout the atmosphere. Carbon is found in the atmosphere. Plants intake this carbon dioxide and release oxygen through a process known as photosynthesis. Animals intake this oxygen released by the plant and through a process known as cellular respiration, release CO2 back into the atmosphere. Animals also consume plants containing carbon as a means of energy. When these plants and animals die, decomposers break down this material, which allows more CO2 to be released into the atmosphere. CO2 also dissolves into water. The ocean contains large amounts of carbon, and through different processes, this carbon is turned into fossil fuels. These fossil fuels are extracted and burnt in buildings, which requires oxygen. The burning of these fossil fuels releases the carbon back into the atmosphere. The burning of forest fires also requires oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. And that is the carbon and oxygen cycle.